With this answer, the merchant and others took the opportunity to deride the men even more. Some mocked, some taunted, some spoke with reproach, and some called for others to strike them. It turned into a noticeable commotion and grew into a great disturbance, to the point that everywhere you looked, the fair was in disorder. As a result, word quickly reached the governor of the fair. He came down right away and appointed deputies from some of his most trusted friends. He put these in charge of investigating what happened and to examine the pilgrims about why they had nearly overturned the fair. So Faithful and Christian were taken for further investigation. Those who presided over the proceedings asked them where they came from and where they were going, and why they were wearing such unusual clothing. Faithful and Christian told them they were pilgrims and strangers in the world, and that they were going to their own country, which was called the heavenly Jerusalem. For those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a country of their own, but as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Hebrews chapter 11 verses 14 and 16. And that they had done nothing to cause the men of the town or the merchants to mistreat them or to delay their journey. The only exception they could think of was when the merchant had asked them what they would buy, and they had responded that they would buy the truth. But those who were appointed to investigate the uproar did not believe them. They thought the two pilgrims were nothing more than madmen and lunatics who came for the purpose of throwing the fair into confusion. Therefore they took them and beat them, smeared them with dirt, and put them into a cage as a spectacle in front of all the men of the fair. There the two pilgrims lay caged for some time as objects of sport, malice, or revenge from the men of that place. All the while the governor of the fair laughed at all that happened to them. But the pilgrims remained patient and did not return abuse for abuse. Instead, they offered a blessing while speaking good words for bad, and showed kindness in the face of brutal treatment. Some men in the fair noticed their example. These men were more observant and less prejudiced than the rest. They began to restrain and accuse the disreputable men for their continual mistreatment of the captives. This made the disreputable sorts all the more angry, and they flew into a rage at those trying to hold them back. They counted them as bad as the caged pilgrims, and accused them as accomplices, worthy of the same treatment. In response, the others replied that as far as they could see, the caged men were quiet, sober, and harmless. They went on to say that many others who attended their fair were more worthy of being put into the cage and ridiculed than the men whom they had mistreated in this way. A variety of opinions were exchanged from both sides, while Christian and Faithful behaved themselves, acting very wisely and soberly the whole time. But the words exchanged turned to blows between the opposing groups, and they did harm to one another. Faithful and Christian were once again dragged before their examiners and charged as guilty for causing the disturbance in the fair. As their punishment, They were beaten unmercifully, hung in irons, and led in chains up and down the lanes of the fair as an example and warning to others who might think to speak on behalf of the pilgrims or to associate with them. Even in all this, Christian and faithful behaved with increasing wisdom and with much meekness and patience amid the humiliation and shame heaped upon them. With such behavior, they won several of the men in the fair to their side, though the number was few in comparison to the rest. This generated even more rage in the aggressive opponents, to the point that they sought the death of the two captives. With this they announced, "This cage and the irons are not sufficient penalty for what these men have done. They should die for the damage they have caused and for deceiving the men of the fair." Then Christian and faithful were imprisoned in the cage again, until the process of the law decided what should be done with them. So they locked their feet fast in the stocks inside the cage. With their feet locked in the stocks, they recalled what their faithful friend Evangelist had told them. It helped them accept their current circumstances and to be assured that the sufferings and trials they were experiencing were exactly what he told them would happen to them. With this in mind, they now comforted each other in that whoever would suffer death, he would have the advantage. In his heart, each man secretly wished that he might be the one, but they committed themselves to the all-wise and sovereign purposes of the Almighty, and with much contentment they rested in the condition in which they found themselves, while waiting to see how they would be disposed of. When a convenient time was determined, the prisoners were brought forth for their trial in order that they could be found guilty and condemned. They were brought before their enemies and were formally accused. The judge's name was Lord Hategood. Their indictment was essentially the same accusation. It had been changed slightly in content. It read that they, Christian and faithful, were enemies to and disturbers of the trading of the fair, and that they had caused commotions and divisions in the town and had, in the process, gained supporters for their most dangerous opinions, in contempt of the law of their prince. Then Faithful answered that he had only spoken against that which had asserted itself against him, who is higher than the highest. He went on to say, "As for causing a disturbance, I made no such thing, for I am a man of peace. As for the supporters who were one to us, they were persuaded when they recognized our innocence and that we spoke the truth. As a result, they turned from what was worse to what is better. And as to the prince you talk about, since he is Beelzebub, the enemy of our Lord, I defy him and all his angels." Then it was proclaimed that anyone who had anything to say in support for their lord, the king, against the prisoner at the bar, should immediately appear to testify and bring forth their evidence. So 3 witnesses came forward: Envy, Superstition, and Pick-thank. These 3 were then asked if they knew the prisoner at the bar, and what they had to say in support of their lord the king, and what had been done against him.